We'll call our meeting to order tonight. Renata, if you could do the roll call, please.
McEvers.
Here.
Ettinger.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Gookin.
Yep.
English. Miller.
If we would rise for the invocation, we have Pastor Sean McCartan from the Life Center.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I brought with me a official Thanksgiving proclamation by George Washington in 1977 that established prayers of thanks as a national practice. And if you listen closely, you guys are mentioned. He says, "And it is further recommended that together with devout thanksgiving may be joined a penitent confession of our sins and humble supplication for pardon through the merits of our Savior, so that under the smiles of heaven our public counsels may be directed, our arms by land and sea prospered, our liberty and independence secured, our schools and seminaries of learning flourish, our trade be revived, our husbandry and manufactures increased, and the hearts of all impressed with undissembled piety, with benevolence and zeal for the public good." A Thanksgiving proclamation. Let's pray. Well, Father, it is wonderful to gather this evening to consider, to discuss the livelihood of this wonderful area, this city. I just thank you for the mayor and the council and everybody involved in making decisions. And I know that it's so important to be praying for people, to have your wisdom, to have your heart. And also when we pray for our leaders, to be thankful. And God, we are thankful for these leaders. And we give you thanks for them, for their investment, for their time, for their sacrifice, for their energy. And we pray a great blessing over their lives and over this meeting tonight. We commit it to you in Jesus' name. Amen?
Amen.
Thank you.
Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nope. We do not have any amendments to the agenda tonight, so we will move first into public comment. If there's any member of the audience that wishes to come forward and address the council, they would have 3 minutes to do so on public business. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes public comment tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to presentations. And our first presentation is on the Kootenai County Transportation System Update. And we have Jody Beasy, who's the Director of Kootenai County Grants Management and Public Transportation, with us tonight. Or maybe it's Amber that's going to do that tonight. We have both of them here.
Let's see if I can not have technical difficulties tonight. Yay! Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Thank you for allowing us to present to you this evening. My name is Amber Conklin, and I work for Kootenai County in the Grants and Transit Department. Prior to coming to the county, I worked for Jobs Plus, the Regional Economic Development Corporation, and before that as the Communications Director for the City of Fairbanks, Alaska. My role in the department for the county is oversight of the paratransit and ring-a-ride programs, as well as interagency and public outreach. Click. Our mission, everything that we do, is based in these 4 pillars, which is education, employment, healthcare, and recreation for the area. We ensure that operational funding received and expended by our agency, subrecipients, and contractors complies with regulatory and statutory standards. Our transit operations fall into 4 categories. The fixed route system is comprised of 3 routes that provide service in the communities of Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, and Dalton Gardens, and operate Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. CityLink North also provides Origin to Destination Americans with Disabilities Act paratransit service within a 3/4 mile area of the fixed routes, as well as a supplemental ring-a-ride service for seniors over the age of 65 and people with disabilities who are outside of the paratransit service area. Financial planning and funding is key to our ability to provide excellent service feasibly. The safety of our riders and drivers is of utmost import to us, and several of our team members have backgrounds in public safety and emergency management. Asset management is a prime element of our stewardship and an area in which we diligently work to maintain our resources to avoid service gaps and get fully extended usage of equipment. As far as service planning, we are actively planning for the future and seeking innovative ways to provide excellent transit service. For instance, we're working toward creation of an app for mobility as a service. That's a concept that allows people to access all the different modes of transportation in an area from one source, one location, whether those be private or public. We also recently hosted the Idaho Transportation Department in discussions on preparation for autonomous vehicles. And while looking to the future, we are keeping an eye on existing needs and want to create additional opportunities for commuter and rideshare programs, and are excited for the new transit center as a hub for these initiatives. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad Engel.
Good evening. I am Chad Engel. I previously, for the last 12 years, was with a retail here in the area and as manager. So public transportation, by the way, I am fixed route. I am the oversight for the fixed route department here with transit. So transit is a pillar to meet our mobility consumers where they are so they can take the best mode for their given trip. As you can see, CityLink North Transit for our fixed route, for the year we're looking at an estimated 142,000. Paratransit ridership, 10,600. With Ring-A-Ride ridership at 2,700, and of that, 1,600 with people over the age of 65. So unlinked passenger count, traveling to Riverstone, we had 35,000 of unlinked passengers. Traveling from Riverstone, we've had 37,200. With our peak travel time being from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that's accounting for 46% of our passenger trips. As you can see, we have our top 10 boarding for the transit, and these numbers are February through October of this year. Post Falls Library being the highest at 3,700 for boarding. And then our top 10 for lighting. So our lighting, we had Post Falls Walmart being the highest at 3,158, with Lakeside and 8th close behind at 3,088, which public transportation still remains critical to the region's economy and strengthens the local community. So a little demographics on the ridership here. So nationally, reasons for taking transportation, we have 40% that need it, 16% saying it's an economic reason, 44% saying it's their preference to take it. The people taking public transportation, 71% are employed, while 7% are students. Education, we have 31% of people with a bachelor's degree, 24% with some college education. And then the reasons for public transportation, 49% say it's for to and from work, with 21% being shopping. All of our buses are equipped with software provided by ETA. ETA is equipped on all our buses, gathering real-time information so we can use it to help predict route changes, establish new routes, and also making transit more efficient and cost-effective. With this on our buses, we have the ETA Spot, which is a handy app where passengers can track where their buses are located. So if you open up the app, it has the routes that you're looking to track and see. So if you click on the routes, it takes you into the application which has our A, B, and C routes. And you can see the bus in real time and the different route stops along the route. If you click on the bus, it'll tell you when the next 3 stop times are going to be and the next 3 stop locations. If you were to click on a route, it would tell you the next anticipated stop times and the status of that bus. There's also a website for Spot, which again has the same information, just in a little bit different format, where the passengers can track, again, the bus, and it gives the next stops located on there and how the bus is running. And then again, you can click on the stop to tell you when the next anticipated bus is coming to that stop.
I have a question, if I could.
Yes.
Back on national ridership profile, do you have that profile for our area?
We are working on doing another service analysis to where we can gather that information, but currently we do not. We just have the national stats on that currently.
Thanks.
As far as planning, we have first our service planning, which takes into account transit providers that feed into it. We have Kootenai Health, the Tribe, MV, along with others, so that we can accurately and get more reliable service to every passenger. And then the jurisdictions, we need their help as well, with Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, Dalton Gardens, and Hutter. And then along with that, using ETA, we can gather the data on our ridership, on where we've been and where we want to go. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Riley and our financial planning.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Riley. Recently joined the staff as the program manager about 4.5 months ago. Like Chad, I have a business management background, and I entered the world of governmental accounting about 10.5 years ago. The most recent 4.5 years I spent at Kootenai County in the auditor's department. Primary focus on budget, also overseeing property tax and grants management. So here we're looking at, oops, sorry, wrong way. Financial planning, so we're looking at our local area. As we all know, our population is growing. With that, demand for services increase, cost of those services increasing. We're all dealing with that in the local government. So this just shows you for the FY18 actuals, the increase FY17 over 18 with two of our biggest variable expenses. We had a 12.6% increase in fuel costs and 12.3% in driver compensation. Part of that was due to a shift in routes. So with that, I've anticipated that should level out a little bit, and we're looking at a $28.2 thousand increase just in those two areas for FY19. So we pay a lot of attention to expenses. We also need to take a look at the revenue, because clearly we need to fund those increases. So our major sources of revenue are our local match, our cash contributions from the city, and the county also makes their share. We have in-kind match, which we use mainly for our operations. We have county personnel. We can write that off as in-kind. Partner contributions, volunteers, and donations. So you can see here that our city agreements for FY19 have remained flat. So what we need to be doing is looking to see other ways that we can increase the funding opportunities. We've been banking the local contributions for our capital expenses with the transit center breaking ground and the acquisition of buses. We have an RFP going out for both fixed route and paratransit buses coming up. That local match is going to be drawn down considerably. So we need to be looking at that. In-kind match, looking for other sources that we can document to write off on that side. We've also secured the grant funding to go into the fare system. So we're going to be looking at implementing a fare system. Reduced rates will be available based on qualification, but that revenue can directly offset some of our operational expenses. So that's just a quick snapshot of what we're looking at. So we need to be doing some planning, and I look forward to working with all of you moving forward in the future.
Thank you.
And now, introducing our director, Jody Beasy.
I just wanted to answer your question when you asked about the profile of the local area in terms of the types of origin to destination. I just wanted to expand on Chad's answer. On the paratransit and the ringer ride, we're able to determine and identify origin to destination, so we actually know where people want to be picked up and where they want to go. On the fixed route, we'll conduct onboard surveys, so we know where they are picked up and we know where they're dropped off, but we're not sure whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's related, unless they're stopping at a particular stop. So we have some information, but not comprehensive information.
Thank you.
Obviously, we really value our public transportation partners, and technology surrounding public transportation is rapidly bringing a change to mobility in our urban area. We are sincerely excited about the future and the opportunity to explore innovative ways to provide public transportation to our community that is fast, convenient, comfortable, and safe. Managing capital assets to provide safe and reliable service is one of our top priorities. And as we seek to enhance community engagement, we will continue to forge relationships with key stakeholders, employers, employees, students, seniors, individuals with disabilities. We continue to focus our attention on increasing access to public transport and the use of public transportation, and at the same time, reducing traffic congestion. Questions?
Jody, remind us again the completion of the transit center, the date of that?
August 2019.
Okay, so this summer.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Very
I think a lot of us are looking forward to that date. I know you are as well.
Yes, very much so.
Any questions for Jody? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Jody, I'm going to ask you about Stop A7, which I've been involved with because we know the people who live next door are not happy with the stop. I actually saw someone waiting the other day at that bus stop, which is the first time. But I know that stops, something's got to happen because 95 is going to get realigned.
Sure.
Which changes your route. So what's the update on that?
Well, currently, we already conducted a preliminary bus test run, and then we'll conduct 2 more and then go for public comment.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Woody?
Jody, on drivers, on the expenses, you're running around 319,000, 107's coming from the cities. Where's the other 200 or so?
The Coeur d'Alene Tribe is providing contribution, as well as Kootenai Health and Kootenai County. And as Kim mentioned, there were other in-kind match that we receive as well. So that's where it's coming from volunteers. Okay.
Any other questions? Jody, I want to just thank you and your staff for all you do. I know that you've worked very hard to get the transit center up and going, and you all work very hard in public transit. It's important to Coeur d'Alene, and I want to thank you and your staff for all the work that you do for it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, transit-related is Tim Martin with our 18 and 19 annual snow plan. Tim?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before I get started on the snow plan, I would like to talk about this year's Leaf Fest. We are on day 5, going on day 6, I believe, and it's going quite well. The actual numbers so far, the tonnage is up a little higher than last year. We're about 300 tons higher in the amount of leaves. I can't tell you why, other than I think a lot of them really came off early this year, and especially in the Midtown and south of Sherman in the Fort Grounds area. We took over 100 loads today just out of the fairways. Wow. So lots of needles and leaves out there. A little bit about this program is we are taking them to the airport. The airport has got some property out there that we are mitigating for them. Here we are, this is our compost facility off Julia. We're actually running them through a shredder before they go out to the airport. Cannon Hill is working with us on that. That's a large live bottom truck right here that's helping us haul them. And when we get them out to the airport, this is your crew actually spitting them out in a compost machine, a manure spreader. So that's what we're doing with our material. It's a great thing for us. It's cost effective, and we're doing a good thing with the soils. You know, I think over time, you could see this being used along your Centennial trails, some of the areas where, you know, that we don't have good soil, that we could actually spread these out there and help. For the citizens out there, you can go on the website and you can click on that and find a map of where we're working. Currently, right now, this hasn't been updated since I did the PowerPoint, but the red means we've completed those areas. Kind of the blue or green is where we were working, and the yellow goldenrod is where we'll be next. So as you can see, actually all this area up in here has all been completed now. So we're north of Appleway. We'll be working in the North Shire, Indian Meadows, and then in the Coeur d'Alene Place tomorrow. So something that's kind of near and dear to me, snow. I mean, it's a big thing in our city. We average over almost 70 inches a year. Every year I'd like to bring the plan to you as in a draft form for you to be able to look at and make comments or thoughts. There are a lot, it's housekeeping for us, but we also take into consideration citizens' concerns over the years and add things to it. In this plan, the updated version is, one of the summary of changes is Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive, that we took that into the city last year, and it's now incorporated in our routes. Want to start with something, customer service. I think the department does a very good job. We're available. We have a voice answers all the concerns. We take every one of them. We try to respond, and we report all major operations, social media, newspaper, TV. We want to look for resolution. Some of the highlights to the snow plan is snow is considered an emergency situation in the city of Coeur d'Alene. Please watch for the equipment out there in the street. Give them room to do their job. Plow operations start with 4 to 5 inches of snow on the road and or 2 inches on the road and more expected. I would like to say we are more proactive than reactive. We're out there on these arterials, I think, at the right time, getting after it. Plowing accomplishment, of course, in your plan is priorities. We always look at the major arterials, the hospital routes, the steep hills, the 911 center, and then we move into the 7th, the collectors, 7th, 9th, 11th, Pennsylvania, to get you out of residential areas and onto good plowed roads. The completion goal is 30 hours. And we've consistently kept it there. Many of our plows now are under or around 24 hours, but as we get these storms, they roll in for 2-3 days. We're still right there around 30 hours, 24 and finishing it up early the next morning. Bare pavement, although that is where we want to be, that is not a goal. I mean, resources cost a lot of money, but we're out there working it all the time. We don't plow alleys. There's issues in alleys, there's old fences, it's really tight, and we really have no way to get the snow out of the alleys unless we hauled it off. We'd just be putting it back into the roads. We encourage residents to keep their cars off the streets during snowstorms. I can tell you our crews they've got a lot of experience at this, and if when we're out there, it's almost to the hour that when we're coming by your homes. And it's the citizens' responsibilities to keep the sidewalks clear.
Tim, I just wanted to add, if you did just back up to that slide there, is that it's so important if citizens can get their cars off the streets. And I think that what happens very early in the snow season is people have an extra car, or maybe they have a boat or a trailer or something on the street. Boats and trailers aren't supposed to be kept on the street, but so after the first plow, then they say, well, you know what, I'm not going to dig this thing out, I'll dig it out in the spring, right?
Correct.
And so then your guys have to continually go around that all the time. So it just makes your guys' job so much difficult. It adds to the time of clearing the roads. And so just if we could just get folks to, and I know some people have to park on the street, that's their only option, I understand that. But for cars that they're just leaving on the street for long periods of time, it makes your guys' jobs really difficult. So if the folks out there could help you and your crew out by moving the car off the street, that would be
And that's a good point, sir. During leaf pickup, we're out there, we hit every street in town. So, I ask my guys to take notes where you see cars that are up on jacks, motor homes that are covered up, to where we can get those to our code enforcement to look at. But a good point is when we're done plowing, we don't wipe our hands and go into something else. We're going to be back into these neighborhoods cleaning where cars were parked. So if you didn't get it out of the way yesterday, they can really help us by moving it around the corner, and we can push back the snow at that time.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Communication, I think that's what it's all about, for us getting the word out to the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. We build strong relationships. We've got a policy on a snow plan and plow status. We're updating and providing Facebook, on Facebook, letting people know where we're at and where we're going to go. We put pamphlets out at the fire station, police station, some of the local stores. Our snow line, the one that comes into our main office, Sue's wonderful, and she keeps that thing up to date. Again, where we've been and where we're going to go. And one of the things that we do after every storm, and we have an opportunity, is the operators all sit down and talk about what went good, what went bad, and what we can do better. And that's made us who we are today, I believe. One of the key things in your snow plan is having the right equipment. This is actually the 20th year that the city of Coeur d'Alene has used the snow gate. We started off in 1998 on a grader. It was called a snowshoe, and we did a couple areas in town. We got feedback from the citizens on what they thought and whether or not they could support this. And we did that for 2 years. It was overwhelmingly supported. So we went in on the grader, or on the loaders. These machines are awesome. The operators love them. The vision, if you can feel yourself sitting in that machine, you can see. You can tell just by the picture how much you can see and what's going on around you. So if kind of show me the numbers type thing, a 10-year average, the city of Coeur d'Alene averages 8 citywide plows and 13 arterial plows on average over the last 10 years. Estimated driveway gatings is over 65,000 every winter. You have to keep that in perspective. You've got an operator out there at 3 a.m. and all he's seen is snow rolling in front of him. We're going to miss a driveway. It happens. Call in. We've got the capabilities to come out there and clear your driveway. We put you on a list, and we've got somebody out running around with a little pickup and a blade on it that'll clear it out of the driveway and move on. We average over 6,300 miles of plowing every year on a 10-year average. 29.5 hours is what we averaged over the last 10 years on our storms. That number reflects almost a 24% completion rate. We've dropped it, and we've added operators out there, but the town is a lot bigger than what it was 10 years ago as far as the amount of roads to do. Winter tips, you know, despite it all, there's going to be challenges out there for us to get around, get to work, get everywhere we need to go. You know, I just ask, give yourself a little bit of extra time on those days that it's snowing. Keep the cars off the street, you know, give us the room, give us the opportunity to make it easier for you. Clear your sidewalks in a reasonable time. And I think, you know, help your neighbor. Get out there and give them a hand when you can. So what's winter going to bring us? I think, you know, everybody in this room's wondered that a time or two. Many have asked us. Here's what the Farmer's Almanac is telling us. You know, it's going to be mild and snowy. The Climate Prediction Center is saying, again, it's going to be warmer, and most of our moisture is going to head south of us. Good thing for skiers, it's going to stay at a higher elevation. Here's kind of the 3-month outlook. This was just updated not too many days ago, you know, that they're giving us a better than a 50% chance of being warmer and a little over 30% chance of being drier. So this year, first storm that rolls into town and the plows pull out of here will be Storm Appleway. This is what we do. We go to about every 5 years, go to the elementary schools. We get with the 4th grade students and ask them to come up with clever names for us. This was Fernan Elementary, so the first one is Appleway, and then we're on to Best, and then Camden. Here's a couple examples that you'd spoke about earlier, sir. You know, here's a car that's been there most of the winter, and we continue to have to go around it. And if you can get those vehicles out of the way, that really helps us widen these streets and push back the snow. This slide I've had for many years, but you can see, I think this was like 2008-9. And you've got cars parked the wrong way on the streets. I think that's actually even a boat back there in the corner. And we were barely able to get through there. So if they can help us to keep these streets clean, it helps a lot. And of course, you know, we worked very hard to try to gate around those hydrants to leave an opening in there, but you know, you can help your emergency services by getting out there and putting a flag around the hydrant and or cleaning it out. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Tim? Ron?
Yeah, Tim, for senior citizens that say can't get out and clean their own sidewalks and stuff, do you have a number that they could call?
We do have a number. There's assistance for them. If they can please call in, or I'll put it on our website. I believe it is on the website that they can call to get assistance.
Woody?
Tim, so I remember you mentioning crews for neighborhoods, and it's like the same guys in the same equipment in the same neighborhoods in their progression, so they actually get to know your neighborhood, right?
Absolutely.
I always thought that was really interesting. You can wave at them, you can hold a cup of coffee at them. Pretty soon, they're like your mailman.
As you get into the newer part of town, sir, you know, those people have plowed that a lot. We've got a lot of cul-de-sacs in there. You know, they know where they want the snow in the cul-de-sac, and, you know, to keep them from us having to go back in and pick the snow up for emergency services to be able to get around. So we manipulate the snow. We don't actually just plow.
You do a great job. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Tim? If no questions, we'll be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the 2018-19 snow plan.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the snow plan. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you,
Thanks,
Tim.
Tim.
Move on to announcements. Any member of the council have an announcement tonight? We have no announcements. We'll move straight into the consent calendar. Woody, what do you think?
Well, I think it's time. Motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 18060.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
Ettinger,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion carried. We now move on to other business. This is the authority to purchase 2 front-end loaders for the compost facility, and we have Mike Becker with the wastewater department here tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, and thank you for hearing me this evening. As you mentioned, this evening, wastewater utility is seeking the request to solicit bids and/or seek an Idaho state procurement for the purchase of 2 new loaders to replace the existing loaders at the compost facility. First, a little history about these loaders. Currently, the compost facility is leasing 2 loaders, John Deere loaders, and that lease will terminate and end on March 10th of 2019. When we requested those quotes 5 years ago, we also asked what a final payment would be if we choose to purchase these loaders. After some evaluation on performances, we decided that it is in the best interest to seek a large and a small loader to work at the compost facility. So we solicited lease quotes, and we budgeted for it this fiscal year. Until recently, we decided, hey, let's see how much these loaders actually would cost if we could direct purchase it. In the process, we were surprised to find out that there's a cost savings of anywhere from $79,000 to $110,000 if we were to purchase these loaders. Now, keep in mind, this will be spread out over 5 years, but however, with that in mind, we decided the best interest for the compost facility would get the appropriate size loaders and take ownership of them. When we solicited the quotes for the leases, we again asked for a final balloon payment at the end of the lease. Our goal was to ultimately purchase these loaders. We believe we can get conservatively 12 to 15 years of life out of these loaders. And at this point, we also are working with the streets department to get one of the loaders to accommodate a snowplow blade to assist in emergency conditions. The other loader is a little bit larger but can still be utilized out on the streets. Maybe not so much on that one photo where Tim had that boat out on the street, but it is still functional. The primary use of these loaders is for the compost facility, and so they're being spec'd out with some provisions to accommodate the needs of the compost facility. And with that, it is our recommendation that we purchase 2 new loaders to replace the existing leased loaders that we have in place now. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
So questions? Woody?
So Mike, you just said the loaders we're on right now are 5 years old?
Our 5 years the lease expires on March 10th of 2019.
So you've done 5 years on it?
Yes, sir.
But you're talking about new ones at 12 to 15 years. I'm not following that.
Well, these were leased, and at that time, we had replaced, the city had owned the 2 loaders that were currently working in the compost facility 5 years ago. We weren't sure what exactly we needed up there, so we went ahead and we cookie cuttered on the streets department's lease program, and we leased 2 loaders. These are medium-sized loaders. Currently, the streets is using them out for plowing and other street work. After reviewing their performance, we were able to determine that it is best interest to have a smaller loader that could operate indoors and a larger loader that could operate outdoors. And by getting the appropriate size loaders, we feel that we could get a longer life than 5 years out of these loaders. Keep in mind, these are leased. We're looking to ultimately purchase. And that's what we had budgeted for this fiscal year anyways, was to lease out loaders with the ultimate goal of purchasing them.
So, Mike, just in looking at these numbers here on your chart, it looks like the small loader got 2 prices to lease. The lowest is $22,608. Is that right? If you lease that on an annual basis.
Yes, that is to lease it.
Okay, and then the large loader is $24,084 is the low price for that lease for 12 months.
That is correct.
And then down in the report here, it says that the budget for 18-19 includes $125,000 for the lease of 2 replacement loaders. Those 2 items total $46,000. Do you have other equipment that's leased in that line that's the difference?
No, sir. What we were doing is we were looking at original quotes that we received from both Caterpillar and John Deere. We didn't know where that would fall into, and so we decided that we would just go ahead and add a little into the budget to cover any additional costs, with the goal that after 5 years we'd have enough to cover the final cost of purchasing those loaders.
So the actual lease payment then is $46,600, and the difference between there is, $80-some thousand was to go towards the final purchase of that?
Correct. And again, we didn't have all the specifications for these loaders established at that time when we received these quotes back in August.
Okay, all right. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that was my question, was about the original thought, why you changed. When you do the lease, does the lease include maintenance?
Yes, it does.
So if we purchase, we have to do our own maintenance.
Yes, but we were intending on working with the streets department on some of the maintenance. The maintenance that it included was simple stuff such as fluids and filters and stuff like that. But the streets department, the fleets, would be doing the maintenance work on the loaders itself.
But there's still a cost associated with that. Is the cost listed here?
Yes, it is.
So the cost is listed as the final payment, or whatever the cost, the line for purchasing the entire loaders flat out includes all the maintenance for 12 years.
Yes, but it does not include a warranty. We just found out today about the warranty, and we're still expanding on that.
Oh. Okay.
We knew that was part of the equation. That's why we were asking for 400,000, because the total comes to, was it 389,000, some change? We knew that there would be some warranty issues that we would want to go ahead and take on with the equipment. So we are aware of that.
Okay, question for Mr. Adams. Are they allowed to budget for 12 years' worth of routine maintenance in a single purchase this year?
I would say no. That's an annual cost. So what they're asking for now, as I understand it, is to go out to bid on 2 loaders. They'll come back with a price, the low bid, but that would be just the price plus the warranty, not the maintenance.
Okay, so the maintenance will be an ongoing cost.
Yes.
Okay.
Woody?
So if I could ask Troy, we go way back in the days when we bought this stuff, and then all of a sudden you rolled out the lease program, and I remember you being so happy and so tickled that we were saving cash flow. And that's always what I remember as being pretty critical, pretty important in this world of taxes and, in their case, fees that we charge. What's your take on difference? Why is the lease not the right thing in this situation? And I would ask Tim if anything ever lasts 10 or 12 or 15 years.
Great question. So this is very much like comparing it to a vehicle. If you wanted to have a new vehicle every 5 years, you wouldn't have to worry about any warranty. You get to turn it back in a lease, and you get a brand new vehicle, you get the maintenance taken care of, and you haven't had to front $400,000 for 2 loaders. The general fund would be hard pressed to put $400,000 out. So we like the lease for that equipment. We know that it's maintained. The leasing companies have a very low cost of the monies, and it's much cheaper in the short run to buy this newer equipment and never have to maintain it. It's warranted from day 1 through day 5 times 365. In this situation, our utility wastewater with the compost function has looked at the loaders that we leased, and you're now seeing a much larger loader due to the bucket size, the height, and things that we want to get done so they can be more efficient in moving material and operator safety and all of those good things. So they have now found the ideal size loaders and have looked at the total cost, because that enterprise fund has more cash than our general fund does, and have looked at the bottom line, and the wear and tear on a loader, which may not hardly ever leave the compost facility, is much less than one that's out pushing snow on the streets for as many miles as it is, doing alley work. This one pretty much moves chips, compost, and I'll clean it up and call it cake that the compost facility processes. So those would be the differences between the general fund use and the look by this utility.
So let me ask you, if when a utility has cash, that doesn't feel right. But if it wasn't a utility, would you still suggest that that's all that equipment's going to do is work in the compost, and it's worth buying it and getting 12 to 15 years out of it? Do you follow? If it wasn't the cash flow side that makes it easier for them to do that, would you go the other route?
Well, not financing
on the
always,
spot or anything.
Not financing always saves you money. If you have the cash and you don't have to pay an interest rate, there is the offset that you could invest the money, but rates today aren't that great for investing the city's money based on our conservative way in which we invest. The utility is going to be in it for the long term. I don't see any way we can get out of processing cake, and we've got a major capital investment up there at compost. So again, looking at it, that's why we're bringing it forward, is because it wasn't budgeted, and the price isn't going to go down for these loaders. And based on the hours that we used them over the last 5 years, I think they're very realistic in the length that these will last us.
So one more comment is just, and we're in our second month of budgeting, and this wasn't budgeted. Come on. You guys were planning for this, weren't you?
It was budgeted as a lease. We budgeted $125,000 to replace these loaders through a lease, not for purchase at the time. We didn't find out about the competitive quotes that these 2 companies were competing against until just here recently, last month.
Okay. I'm sure we'll see more of this.
They're after business. They're trying to get everyone on board. We could either lease these or we can purchase them, but we did plan for it. Councilman McEvers.
Any other questions? Ron?
Yeah, now you said that the street department can use these loaders too, right?
Yes, the primary purpose for these loaders is obviously for compost. We need one clean loader and one dirty loader. And so, but they're setting it up, one of the loaders for a plow system, which requires a special attachment and an extra lever and hydraulics to operate the gates on the loaders. So it will be set up for the streets department for emergency conditions when we have, obviously, those big snowfalls. The bigger loader will be pinned with a bucket, but still could be utilized to load the snow. It has the ability, a pin bucket essentially has the ability to pivot the bucket upright further and unload it downright.
But you still get that loader with a lease.
What's that?
You still get that loader with a lease.
Absolutely, because we're speccing these out. We have an idea what we need at the compost to increase efficiency.
All right.
Any other questions? If there's no other questions, we'll be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we deny the purchase of 2 front-end loaders and encourage wastewater to continue with the plans to lease instead.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to lease instead of purchase. Any further discussion on that?
To lease now?
Yeah, give them the equipment they would like, but to lease instead of purchase. Yes, Amy?
I'd like to hear Troy's recommendation on this. Put you on the spot.
I believe that the equipment that is proposed has enough multi-use so that the street department can use it. We have had a consultant that's looked at our compost facility and recommended the larger bucket, the larger front-end loader. So I don't see those 2 pieces of equipment changing. Because this utility does have the cash and there is savings just by looking at these numbers, I don't believe that the maintenance would move this proposal into the red as far as a negative by us maintaining it versus the company. So we are, after much discussion, recommending the purchase of these loaders to save the utility money, have these long-term assets, and do our best to maintain them.
Yeah, I guess the question that I would have, Troy, is that we do have a lot of outstanding money currently from the wastewater department, both from purchase of a railroad right-of-way and purchase of a mill site. So we have an extended amount of cash out there of the fund balance of wastewater currently.
Correct. And we just raised the rates.
Right?
That
So
was a
we've got-
statement.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, any other questions? So the motion on the floor and seconded is to lease the 2 front head loaders for the compost facility. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And do you want to do roll call, Renat, on that?
Sure. Eddinger,
No.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
Evans.
No.
Yes.
Mayor.
Would be my vote, yeah. Okay, thank you, Mike. So now we will get into our public hearing, and we have 3 separate public hearings. It's a little different format tonight in that the presentation will have 3 of the council bills presented for each one of the urban renewals. Then public comment will be on each individual. So we're not kind of guiding you through this. The staff will present for all 3. Then we will open up each one of these 3 urban renewal decisions. We'll not have a decision tonight. You will read the title, and then I will table the decision for our next meeting on December 4th. Is that correct?
Can I ask why we're choosing to do it that way?
Yes, you can, and Renata will answer that question.
Good.
It was actually published in the newspaper under the notice of public hearing as a first reading only, with the second hearing delayed to December 4th. So since it was published that way in the paper, we have to follow that.
I'm assuming that we didn't publish it in the paper that way.
It was prepared by the Urban Renewal Legal Counsel.
Okay, so, and the legal counsel's not here, so I can't ask why it was chosen to be split.
I'm sure we get a discount or something.
Not if you're hiring a lawyer, I mean, no.
Did
Anyway,
that answer your question?
barely, thank you.
Oh, okay.
A discount,
So
bummer.
we will start this asking if there's any member of the council that has a conflict of interest on this, anything here? So no conflicts of interest seen. So we will open up for the staff report, and I believe that we have Phil Boyd with Welsh Comer is going to give the staff report on all three of these council bills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You know, maybe when I start this out, Phil, Renata, I should probably read exactly what we're doing here, correct, into the record. So this is to consider the Second Amendment to the River District Redevelopment Plan of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency doing business as Ignite. Consider the Second Amendment to and restated Midtown Northwest Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan, now referred to as the Lake District Urban Renewal Plan, Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, doing business as Ignite, and to consider the Urban Renewal Plan for the Atlas Urban Renewal Project of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, doing business as Ignite. Phil.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I am doing a little bit of pinch hitting tonight. Tony Burns is a little bit under the weather and wasn't able to attend tonight, so I'll do my best. The mayor just hit the objective of tonight. What I'm intending to do is to provide some background. I think the council is pretty familiar with the project, but the Ignite, specifically Tony, wanted to review the background leading up to the ordinances that you're going to hear tonight. This is an aerial photograph that I like just to give everyone a little bit of perspective. This is Celtice Way. Here is Riverstone in this area. The city's property is this part of the old Stimson Mill site. The River's Edge property that's owned by Mr. Douglas is that area. Obviously, the city's railroad right-of-way continues through there, but it's pretty fascinating to look at the condition of that property and what went on there in 1998, which for a lot of us doesn't seem like that long ago. This is an aerial photograph of the site now. Gives you a little bit of context. That's a pretty substantial 45-acre parcel that the city acquired. You can kind of look at that in comparison to the Riverstone site. And then, again, the Lance Douglas parcel is right here. And Mr. Mayor, if it's appropriate, I'm glad to take questions as we move through the presentation.
Yeah, that would be fine. Just feel free to ask questions when you'd like to.
This is a density map that we put together early on. Hillary and I were having a discussion one day, and we were just contemplating the surrounding density. And normally, you all are used to seeing these maps kind of in a land use allowable density. This is an actual density map, and it provides a range. So don't get too hung up on the colors, but green is obviously lower density, and then the red is higher density. You can see this site doesn't currently, it's zone C17 when you annexed it. The proposal I'll show you a little bit later is right around that density, but you can see some of the higher density over in the Riverstone area. We did put in the Douglas parcel as it's in that range of C17 to 34. The gray area is commercial property, but it does kind of an interesting image if you're into these kind of things.
Yeah, and I question the green down there at Belle Rive and then up near Mill River, because that to me is really dense.
We pulled these off of the city's records and the county records using the GIS, so I can certainly go back and look at that. It could be that some of the open space for the PUD is included in that density calculation.
So there's no open space in the bottom one, I can tell you that. But the other ones, it just seems kind of odd, because traveling that area, walking the trail and riding my bike, it just doesn't seem like it. I would call it a green, but that's just a minor quibble.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that comment, though. It's worth looking at. So the process leading up to this meeting, it started with community engagement. The very first meeting was Councilmember Miller, who's not here tonight, was leading that effort with CDA 2030 and with Hillary, and they did a really neat meeting in this very room that asked a series of questions to a bunch of community groups, and that feedback we were able to use, our consulting team, to move forward right into the developing concepts that we rolled out to the public at the first open house meeting in March of this year. We did another meeting in April, and continue to refine the concept that I'm going to show you in a bit here, and then rolled it out to the City Council at the NIC workshop with Ignite. That resulted in this site master plan, and the objective of the site master plan was let's identify a project that is both financially feasible and to the extent we can represent the community values. And I think the number one community value, I know, that we heard over and over again was preserving the waterfront. Preserving that waterfront in the master plan obviously takes out a very valuable piece of property for development. And so that segues into the financial feasibility analysis, is how do you pull out this very valuable piece of a developable property on the waterfront for public use and still make this project financially feasible. That number 3 item was a really challenging effort, I will tell you. We spent a tremendous amount of time revising the development, the infrastructure, how elaborate the public space got developed in order to get to a financially feasible project. And that is Ignite's obvious objective, is it has to be financially feasible in order for them to want to advance that urban renewal district plan to the city. Ultimately got to that point. We rolled out the urban renewal district plans to the board. They approved them. We went to planning and zoning on the 20th. And as I think in Hillary's staff report or Tony's staff report, it noted that the objective there was to show compliance with the comprehensive plan, which planning and zoning made that finding. So that's what brought us to tonight. After tonight, or I guess after December 4th, provided that the council elects to approve the districts, the next steps will be moving into the platting and the PUD and the development standards. And development standards may not be a term you're all familiar with, but in this project it became very clear and very important to the urban renewal district that the project have a set of development standards to guide how the site is developed over a long period of time. Because you can imagine this is going to take 6 to 9 years to develop. And the development standards will be important to maintain the continuity and the quality.
Along those lines, using Riverstone as an example, it kind of started that way, and then it got sidetracked, the economy went up, and it changed. So this could go through that same.
It could, and as Tony Burns says frequently, anticipate change. We understand that the market will change. One of the unique features here, and it's different because in this situation, a public entity is in control of the dirt. And your view, and I use that term both Ignite and the city, is much longer. And you can choose to say, gosh, our carrying costs are very low. We have the opportunity to sit in on this and wait for the products we want to happen here. And developers don't always have that flexibility, we'll call it. The importance of the development standards is it allows you to project this image to buyers, because I'll show you this in a second. There's multiple blocks that could be sold at one time, and if you buy a block and I buy a block, I want to know that the block you're buying and what you're going to build is the similar quality to what I'm going to build. So we both have harmony in what we're doing there and maintain the long-term value of the product. But you're absolutely right about the change. We anticipate that happening, and the site development standards will help maintain continuity to minimize that drastic change. Other part that is very important, particularly to the mayor, because he's mentioned this to me over and over again, was getting the public space design completed and under construction in 2019. You know, the mayor's point has been during the steering committee process, the property is in public ownership, let's put it to use. So let's get the trails in there, let's get the landscaping done, let's get the amenities that we can get in there in 2019. Obviously, it will take some time for it to grow in. Finish in the fall, and in the spring of 2020, we can imagine a really nice corridor in that area. So that's was a big priority, not both only for the mayor, but the Ignite board also thought the same thing. They had funding set aside for it in the Lake District, and so moving forward with that in 2019. And then later on in the year, site infrastructure improvements, and then Ignite guided property disposition or selling of the property. And that could take, 6 to 8 to 9 years, depending on how the market absorbs the property. So that's moving forward, again, provided the ORDs are formed. So the site, you have seen this master plan before. I am going to point out a few things about it. You'll notice the public space down here, the entire plus or minus 4,000 lineal feet reserved for the public use, kind of a larger open space in here. There's a commercial parcel right there and commercial along this edge here. One of the things that, of course, in every master plan, you get it done and you decided we need to change this a little bit. And it was towards the end of this, and Hillary had made a good observation about the density of commercial down in here, where we had it in the back of our mind as well, that maybe a little bit more commercial in this area would be appropriate. Part of what we're just moving into here as part of this development standards is revising this master plan a little bit to consider that option in that area.
Wait a second, we're supposed to be approving the plan tonight, but you just said you may change it.
So the plan that is in front of you, back to what Councilman McEvers said, is subject to change. The urban renewal district, those boundaries, which I'll show here towards the end, won't change. But what might go inside of that may change slightly. The process of that change occurring will be in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's not, this hasn't been approved by any city entity yet. It's simply a master plan concept subject to being moved through Planning and Zoning Commission. So I should have made that point clear from the beginning.
So if this is not in the plan that we're addressing tonight, why are we discussing it?
This is the basis for your plan. This is the financial basis that establish the financial feasibility of the plans that are in front of you. Meaning the types of development. So if we just think about the simple math equation, the sources of revenue and the uses of those revenue, does it stay in the black? This concept here is what is projected to achieve that, which is why the Ignite Board is advancing the urban renewal district plans to you.
Okay. I'm not done. I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I'm just saying you may continue speaking.
Thank you. I was pausing. So let's see. The other part that I'll point out here is Mount Hink, which is shown here as a nature park. The short story there is the remediation of that property is estimated to be so extensive that the cost to remediate it wouldn't be worth the value to sell the property. And so one idea is just go in there and reshape the soils that are there into a really nice amenity, a public amenity. If you were to go out there and hike up on the top of those and look out at the Spokane River, it's really a fantastic area. Another potential change to the plan you're seeing here is we're currently in the process of prospecting for suitable soils in that area to see if we can identify more developable property, sellable property. And again, that would come back through city processes for consideration and approval. Zooming in a little bit more on the project here, just to show a diversity of the product types. In the planning and the financial feasibility analysis, as you consider the different scenarios, do you go in and put all single-family residences? Do you go in and put all multifamily product? That was quite a bit of discussion. Our real estate advisory group did a bunch of market comparisons and evaluated that a multitude of uses, from apartments to commercial to townhomes to single family, you're hitting multiple parts of the market, which is a positive thing because all of us have different needs. You're also putting a diversity of economic groups in there, and that is a really positive thing for neighborhoods, is to have not a simple homogeneous type neighborhood. This gives a lot of bit of diversity. And then the commercial products, what I mentioned earlier. One of the things I'll point out on this slide that I've pulled back on is you notice the road here that comes off of Atlas, and it's the main part of this project, continues on through here, moves here, continues up to Suzanne, and it used to continue on down along the old Centennial, along the Centennial Trail alignment. That was a concept that we rolled out early in the development. It received quite a bit of attention from the neighbors, the Centennial Trail Foundation. Ignite evaluated a number of different scenarios with that, but in the life of that Centennial Trail road replacement option is kind of pulled off the table, which is why I've just removed that from the image. At the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was some confusion about that. I was using an old slide, so I had my staff pull that out to add a little bit more clarity to what's being proposed here. The transportation connections at this point, and you all probably might know we're in the middle of a transportation study, are Atlas, this road here, which doesn't have a name, and then Suzanne. The pedestrian connections are very strong and important to this because obviously there's the opportunity to continue to the west along the railroad grade. If the city's MOU comes to fruition with Mr. Douglas, that might get moved along the waterfront, which would be very nice. And there's also pedestrian connections on the Centennial Prairie Trail out that way and along this direction as well. This, one of the important features, and this is getting in a little bit of detail, but it's important because we hear this frequently. We heard it frequently during the public meetings is the views and vistas, is retaining this really important view. And you can imagine coming off of Atlas, looking down here, the way that the street is organized and the buildings are oriented and structured is where that star is a really clear open view to the river. The same thing with this one here. These each have really powerful views to the river and also access down to the river, which is another thing we heard over and over again. All of those things get put into this financial analysis that we talked about and developing a financially feasible project. That ultimately boils down to what you see here is the proposed districts. This is a wide view. It shows the Douglas parcel here to give you your bearings. This is Atlas Road. And the idea is, the proposal is that there's portions of the river district that will be de-annexed and annexed into the, or included in the new Atlas districts. There's portions of the Lake District that will be de-annexed and included, portions of the River District that will be de-annexed and included in the Lake District. And a lot of those follow infrastructure needs. So where we plan to do certain types of infrastructure improvements and the scheduling of those infrastructure improvements. Zooming in a little bit more, you can see some of that detail in there.
So, Phil, this map shows all the annexing and de-annexing for the existing districts.
Yes.
So the portion that was going to be on Northwest Boulevard that was talked about being de-annexed, that's not being de-annexed.
The portion on Northwest Boulevard.
The Garden Motel.
Oh, not to my knowledge.
Okay. I didn't see it in there, but I'm asking it because it came up at an earlier meeting.
Oh, no, that's no, I'm not aware of that.
Thank you.
While you're still there, Phil, so the reason that the waterfront is going into the Lake District, the old Lake District, is?
Because the Lake District has funding available to be immediately deployed for the public space improvements.
Okay. It's about the money. They've already got it. The new one's going to take a while to generate it.
Correct. And the River District also has funding available, which is why you see this area being expanded as part of the River District, because that would be the area that would be the first to develop for sellable property. And so the River District has funding. The River District will also loan the Atlas District some money. And so this area in here would be the first phase of the development to be actually have streets and infrastructure put into it.
And it doesn't have to be contiguous? I don't see the River District up against it, no?
No, I should have explained that better. This cream color out here, if that's what we'll call that color, or whatever, Tim used a funny color name that I had never heard before, so I'll have to get his dictionary of colors.
You said goldenrod.
Goldenrod, yes, thank you. We'll use this as goldenrod. This is the River District, the existing River District, and this color is the expansion of the River District. Part of the reason that you see the River District in two different areas here, and this might be getting into a little bit too much detail, is that this piece of infrastructure, Suzanne, which I'll go back to this image, needs to be extended early on in the process in order to get the public into the park space, because they need to be able to get to the parking area. If we weren't to construct Suzanne early on, but this area was constructed early on, you can imagine where the public would go. They'll go to this neighborhood and park in the commercial parking lots, and those folks will get frustrated because the public is there to enjoy the park. And so the idea is to do it in that fashion. So we're serving both the needs of the public to be able to have somewhere to park and be able to sell parcels down here.
Phil, you used the word loan, and I've heard this before, that the River District is going to loan money to the Atlas District.
Yes, sir.
How can it do that? I mean, I know that a urban renewal, a revenue allocation area cannot spend money generated within that area outside of that area. So is that, now maybe this is more a question for Mr. Adams, but I was unaware that one district could loan money to another district.
I will defer to Mr. Adams, because that is beyond my skill set.
And it's beyond my skill set. The council for the urban renewal district has indicated that that is permissible.
That just means it hasn't gone to court yet.
Has not gone to court, has not come to me for an opinion either. So we're at this point relying on outside counsel, urban renewal experts to tell us what can and cannot be done.
So Dan, since we are coming back on the 4th of December, maybe Randy can get together with the Ignites Council and get an answer.
Yeah, that would be good.
For your question
That's
on that.
part of the funding thing in here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the summary, and obviously I think you guys understand the summary tonight. It's the expansion of the River District, some de-annexation and adding to the Lake District, de-annexation added to the new Atlas District, and then expansion of the Lake District, and then the Atlas District creation. So there's quite a few moving parts here, which is why we like this map that kind of captures everything in one image.
I just have to say, you guys, I know we stuck our necks out to get this, to make it, to do it. I mean, we've all been part of this, and it's pretty creative how you guys have figured out how to get it going. Because urban renewal districts, there isn't much there to begin with. It takes years for them to generate the money or somebody to develop it and turn it into revenue that, so it's a little confusing, but I think we've committed ourselves to doing this. We've borrowed money from the wastewater, thanks you guys. And we gotta pay it back eventually, you know, it's part of the scary cash flow thing, so pretty creative. I appreciate the efforts, even though it seems really weird, you know.
Weird. Dan, so, thank you, Mr. Bear. So you're talking about all three right now?
Correct.
So my questions mostly relate to the Atlas District, the new district, and unfortunately, you're probably not an expert in the area of urban renewal law to be able to address some of these issues, but I'm going to ask them anyway, so I understand that if this is out of your wheelhouse. But my concern is we have stuff that council wants to do that we've said that we want done here. When we made the purchase, it was unanimous. We've had a lot of public meetings. We've had a lot of public input. And so I want to make sure that the public is still in the driver's seat of this thing. And one of the concerns, and I'm just going to refer to the Atlas plan, which is the new plan, in section 104, it says that the activities listed in attachment 4 will be determined or prioritized as the overall project area develops through the annual budget setting process. And what that means to me is that things can happen that may not be in the plan. The next line actually reinforces that, where it says the agency reserves the right, which I don't think the agency has a right, it has powers, to prioritize the projects described in the plan and to retain its flexibility in funding the various activities. And that makes me nervous when someone talks about the millions of dollars that are going to be spent here and the amount of public input that we've had on this and concern from members of the public who want to see it happen when we're talking about things and we're using flexibility and we're using setting policy through a budget as opposed to enumerating things in a plan specifically the way they should happen. And I understand a lot of this predicates on selling the property so that you can have money to do things. But even then, within this plan, there's really nothing other than the map that you showed that says, kind of, here's what we want to do, but again, throughout there's Section 407, minor variations. There's a lot of stuff in here that says this plan can change as it goes forward. And it anticipates that people will come forward and say, hey, I have an idea, which is the way that Ignite, formerly LCDC, used to operate with the downtown district. And all of a sudden, something pops up that was never on the radar, that wasn't discussed in public. And that's a major concern of mine. And it should be a concern of the public. This is how they got into trouble, was all of a sudden something would come up and we'd be like, well, where was that? So I know I'm saying this to you, and you are like me, you're kind of on the peripheral of this a little bit because you're not Ignite.
But I will do my best to tell you the approach that Tony has led with the advice of his board, his input from his board, and the guidance of their legal staff. On the public input components, I think it's important that the council knows that there's two pretty significant areas where the council is going to be, or the public will be participating in: the site development standards, the plating, and the PUD. So what the development actually looks like, that is a public process that goes through planning and zoning.
But it doesn't come to council. A PUD doesn't come to council unless it's appealed.
Absolutely, I agree.
So we're out of the loop.
Yep. So sure, but there is a public process, and I think that was the point you were making, is a public process, and that is a public process. It doesn't land at council, but it does land at planning and zoning, which is a public process. The water public space design and construction, that is a Parks and Rec process, and again, it doesn't rise to city council, but there's public meetings and public input, and there's a very robust schedule that goes on there. So those two are public processes. On the other part about the flexibility, I will say that the Ignite board is also well aware that they need the flexibility to be able to move as the market moves, subject to the controls of the PUD and the development standards. But as the market changes, they want to be able to move quickly and respond to that and be able to sell these parcels. But again, back to this point with a long vision, you know, they're not in it for the short term. They're in it to be able to help reimburse the city for their funding, but they also understand that there's tax increment, and there's the importance of creating that neighborhood and making it be special and high value and not disjointed, if I may. So that might not be a legal answer for it, but I will tell you that is the spirit that I have received from both the direction from Tony, his board, and the legal counsel shaping the documents, I will say.
Yeah, it's just that the new code, which is just mentioned here, talks about it's 502905, which talks about specificity, and it's just there's not a lot of specificity in here. And I know that it's limited to funding, but still, when you compare this to other urban renewal plans around the state, you see that there's a lot of stuff. So that a councilman, say in the year 2027, can ask the Urban Renewal Agency, so according to your plan, where are you? And that data is not in here other than the financials.
In the financial feasibility report, that data is in there, where the projected expenditures will occur and what year they'll occur in. So in those spreadsheets in the very back, if you unfold them and start drilling into the detail, they're part of this overly complicated spreadsheet that we have that achieve that financial feasibility. So those projects are identified by line and in the year you would anticipate that the funding would be spent in.
But so other than spending money, how can I look at this plan and judge that the urban renewal district is being a success?
When you look at those spreadsheets, in each fiscal year, there's a number at the bottom, and it's either red or black. And as you continue on, those need to be black. So it's so the measurement of success of an urban renewal district is whether it spends its money. Absolutely not. I guess I thought you were asking that if that's the measurement. There's a lot of intangibles about it. If the urban renewal district moves along and it reimburses the city, it achieves its objectives of building the public space, reviving that depreciated piece of property, and there's no projects that they determine worthwhile to move forward with, they can sunset the district early. And there's nothing prohibiting sunsetting the district early. And that was actually one of the topics.
Encouraging it either.
Well, but it was a topic of discussion with, I will say, in our steering committee, and I think even at the board level of the district, they talked about that.
The other thing that causes me concern, so we're talking about assets, and this goes back to Idaho Code 502905, and that the agency may retain assets or revenues generated from the district, just shortening it here, beyond the closure of the district. For those assets which do not provide such resources or revenues, the agency will likely convey such assets to the city. But there's no assets listed here. So we're giving them license to what?
That's beyond my skill set.
Okay,
We'll make
I
a note of
appreciate it.
Yeah, that's when I could not.
No, I understand where you are, and Hillary's been in the same spot where she's had to be pinch hitting for someone, so, yeah. But thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
If I could, just along those same line, Dan, I'm hearing things, so maybe some clarification. Biggest difference with this from other urban renewals districts that I've been involved with is that those were private properties. And urban renewal was there to help them get it going, get the streets in, the sewer, the water. This is our dirt. This is the taxpayers' dollars. I think that's, as I look at this, that's probably the more where I feel pressure. Before the urban renewal district, it wasn't necessarily on us. It was urban renewal took care of it, and it was their dollar, and their reimbursement came from their success. This is based on ours. We borrowed the money. It's taxpayer dollars, or however you want to look at it. We're responsible for it. And I think I kind of follow where you're going. This feels different. More risk, a whole lot more risk. It's our risk. It's not the private risk. Hopefully the private guys will step up and do it. And I'm thinking that urban renewal, this is kind of new ground for them too, isn't it?
It is, and that very observation that you had is one that they shared as well. There's some of the urban renewal commissioners that are very financially minded. All of them are, but some of them, it's their livelihood.
Sit next to number one.
That's one of them you're sitting next to. There's a couple of others as well. And during the process of developing the financial feasibility model, we did a sensitivity analysis to try to address what happens when the market drops 3% and costs go up 4%. How does that affect the finances? And we looked at those scenarios with the board and the steering committee, and we're able to identify things that you can do to accommodate that. If the revenue goes down, there's things you simply aren't going to get done in the public space, which is why when you look at this image here, the initial project for the public space is what we've called clean and green. It'll be a very nice space, very functional. It'll have trails going through it, but it is not going to be McEwen Park. And it probably never will be McEwen Park because that's not what the public desired there. But the funding doesn't exist. Now, 7 or 8 years into the road or 10 years into the urban renewal, if there's funding, maybe the park gets some enhancement to it. But it was a very conservative deployment of funds up front in order to try to mitigate that risk. And Tony Burns is probably as financially conservative person as I've worked with, and he takes a lot of guidance from his board. So we were very sensitive to that and looked at that in the model.
And I think, Phil, it's important to note that the Lake District is being expanded over the waterfront because there are the funds in the Lake District to improve that.
Correct.
So that those funds are going to be done. The infrastructure that is planning that in the initial stages is funded through the River District, and there is cash flow in the River District to pay for those. So there is the cash flow in all of this very long financial analysis where it's staged, we're paying as we go. Worst-case scenario is you get to the end, we have some infrastructure in there that's paid for. We have waterfront that is improved. And let's just say that you don't sell any property, right? But the infrastructure is in, the park is improved, the city still owns 50 acres of riverfront property, right? So that's the risk. And it's a calculated risk. There has been a lot of work done to minimize that risk. And I think that they've done a lot of work on the cash flow analysis, and it's solid and it's conservative. So we have, but again, there is a risk.
There's always a risk.
But it is a very solid financial analysis.
So the map you showed, the kind of the district maps that had the colors, the one with the canary or whatever we're calling that. What in the plan is the benefit to River's Edge? Because you're including River's Edge over there on the left side of the screen. What benefit in the plan is for them?
In theory, they could avail themselves of funding from the district through an OPA.
So there's no plan?
For them.
For them. But, so we're including a huge swath of land that basically it's just a cash grab. I mean, my words are crude, I understand.
But again, I guess it would be to use any increment from any improvements that are done on the River's Edge site to pay for any improvements that's in the Atlas District. Any funds that are created
But there's
from River
nothing
Edge.
in the plan that says what those will be.
Well,
You see, again, I'm
yeah, you might have to
criticizing the
dig a
plan
little. You might have to
because
dig,
it's vague.
Yeah, you might have to dig a little
vague.
bit in there, but I will point out that there is a substantial sewer line that actually runs through River's Edge to service the Atlas parcel.
It exists.
The sewer line?
Is it sewer line in, sewer in? No, yes, no.
Right away.
No, yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's
So I don't
into,
know if the River's
into
Edge.
this, you can just see the end of the cul-de-sac there, where the sewer line ends, but the new interceptor would continue on through here and into this parcel. So you could say that is a benefit that they would receive.
But that's not in the plan.
Well, again, you'd have to dig for it, but it is in the financial feasibility study.
What's in the financial, oh, so it is?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's a line item in there.
good.
Yeah,
You get a gold star for that one.
thank you.
Any other questions for Phil? Okay,
Okay,
then we will open up the public testimony portion of this, and we'll start with Council Bill number 18-1029, which is an ordinance approving the Second Amendment to the River District Development Plan of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency doing business as Ignite CDA, and Hillary is going to get those sign-up sheets.
As a correction, that would be 2-7, not 2-9.
Okay, there you go. That's why we have you around.
I still,
I don't even know when to. They're wrong.
now they're kind of, just Renata, the testimony has to be limited to the specific item. I mean, you can't have someone comment just generally on all three plans?
Randy, I'll leave that up to you. I'll capture it in the minutes either way. But I think the hope is to try and organizationally capture the testimony for each one of these changes. So you'll have one ordinance for the river, one ordinance for the lake, and then one ordinance for the Atlas.
Is there any way that we could accept testimony on just open it for everything and then have the motions to table all cascade afterwards? Or does it have to be specific? I mean, I don't want to limit the public, so if someone comes up and they say they want to talk about the project in general, and it's like, well, no, this is just the river district.
An example, Randy, is that Mr. Lyons has signed up that he wants to have public testimony on all three items. I mean, could he come up and give testimony on all three of those at once rather than have to sit down and come back up and sit down and come back up?
I'm gonna get 9 minutes. I'm gonna say the same thing about it. It's the same issue, in the same language. I can say it 3 times, or I can say it once.
Randy, what would you like?
Yeah, power.
It's a game on.
There we go. There are technically 3 separate public hearings.
Okay.
One for each, and Council for Ignite has indicated they would like them very clear in the record that they are separate. And so unfortunately, that would require some duplication of the testimony, although I suppose we can have Mr. or whoever is testifying say ditto on what I said before.
Mr. Lyons, come on up, we'll figure it out. I think as far as a testimony that goes into the record, if your testimony is the same for all three of the hearings, you can give your testimony, and then Renata, you could note in the
Ditto
minutes.
it twice more.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
so David will, Mr. Lyons, I'm sorry.
My name is David Lyons. I live in Coeur d'Alene.
And we'll need to swear you in too, please.
Oh, okay.
Okay, please affirm or swear the following. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My name is David Lyons. I want to talk about one aspect of the written plan documents. It's the same language in all three documents. It's the same issue. Disposition of assets upon plan termination. What happens to assets that are in a district when the district expires? This is one of the items that the statutory amendments of 2016 require to be described with specificity, quote unquote. So the language appears, it's in section 800 of the Atlas Plan, section 800 as amended of the River Plan, and it's in the Lake documents, the Lake Amendment, pages 12, 13, and 14. It's item 14. That begins on page 12, goes over to 13 and 14. I've been concerned with the Lake District, which we know expires December 31, 2021, 3 years from now, basically. And we've all sort of been assuming that, oh, if there's any of the land left in the Urban Renewal Agency, it, quote, automatically reverts to the city somehow. When we've all been sort of assuming that, at several urban renewal meetings, I heard the counsel for the Urban Renewal Agency say comments to the, oh, that's not necessarily so. Or, you know, the agency will still exist and da-da-da-da. So I decided to take a look at these written plan documents and see exactly what they said about that. And the Lake, I can refer, they're all, the language is identical in all three, but I'll just talk about Lake. The top of page 14 of the Lake Amendment, toward the end of this section, we have a paragraph, and I'll just read it. Quote, upon termination of the revenue allocation authority of the plan. That's December 31, 2021. Upon termination of the revenue allocation authority of the plan, to the extent the agency owns or possesses any assets, the agency shall dispose of any remaining assets by granting or conveying or dedicating such assets to the city, unquote. Fine, sounds good to me. That's what I thought, you know, was going to happen. There'll be a period, they have to wind down things, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, pay all the bills, et cetera. But as soon as it was reasonably possible, if there were still any bare land, for example, or any property in the Lake District as of January 1, 2022, the agency would convey that to the city as soon as loose ends were all tied up and that could be done. Unfortunately, that seems to be ambiguous in these documents, and that, having heard the counsel for the Urban Renewal Agency make those statements at board meetings, a red flag went up in my mind when I read this. I know Mr. Adams is, I mean, I wish that the counsel for the Urban Renewal Agency were here tonight, and I could ask her, or I could ask Mr. Burns my questions. I know you all are the city council, not the Urban Renewal Board, and I know, but perhaps this is something that when Mr. Adams is talking with the Urban Renewal Agency's lawyer, they can go over. But after that very clear language that I just quoted, There's then another paragraph which I respectfully find largely incomprehensible. I think I sort of know what they're driving at, but it's not at all clear. And then we have a final paragraph which says, for those I'll read this quote, for those assets which do not provide such resources or revenues, the agency will likely convey such assets to the city, depending on the nature of the asset, unquote. So we started with a paragraph that was all-inclusive, any assets remaining, and that was mandatory. It said the agency shall convey or dedicate or grant, et cetera, those to the city, period. That's all it said. Now we're talking about for only certain assets which don't qualify, and the agency will likely convey them to the city, depending on the nature of the asset. So I think there's a loophole there, which I think leaves room for mischief in the future. And I think that this is something that the city would be well advised to clarify with the Urban Renewal Agency and their council.
Thank you. And Randy, you'll seek some clarification on that for us?
I will, Your Honor.
Yeah, thank you. So I know, Tom, you signed up, so I think what we'll do, Tom, is I'll go through the order here, and then you're signed up on the Atlas District, and you can come up there. So is there anyone else that would wish to testify on this public hearing portion, which is on the River District? If there is no one else, I will close that testimony, and then I will ask Renata to read the title.
Council Bill number 18-1027, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, approving the Second Amendment to the River District Redevelopment Plan Urban Renewal Project, which Second Amendment seeks to de-annex certain parcels from and add parcels to the existing River District project area, which Second Amendment includes revenue allocation financing provisions, authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to the county and state officials and other taxing entities, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing severability, approving the summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
And we will table this item until the December 24, 2018 council meeting. We'll
December 4th.
Okay, December 4th. God dang. Thank you for correcting me. So now we will go on to Council Bill number 18-1028, an ordinance approving the Second Amendment to and restated Midtown Northwest Boulevard Downtown Urban Renewal Plan, now referred to as a Lake District Urban Renewal Plan, Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, doing business as Ignite CDA. So we'll open public testimony. I will make note that Mr. Lyons' testimony that he had under the River District, he would like to apply to this category as well. So Renata, if you could make note of that. And I will open the public testimony, ask if there's anyone else that would wish to testify under this item. Not seeing anyone else, I will close the public testimony portion of this. And Renata, if you could read the title.
Council Bill number 18-1028, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, approving this Second Amendment to the Second Amended and Restated Midtown Northwest Boulevard Downtown Urban Renewal Plan, now referred to as the Lake District Urban Renewal Project Plan, which Second Amendment seeks to add parcels to the existing Lake District project area, which Second Amendment includes revenue allocation financing provisions, authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to the county and state officials and other taxing entities, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing severability, approving the summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
And we will table this item until December 4th of 2018. Then we'll move on to the last item here, which is Council Bill number 18-1029, an ordinance approving the urban renewal plan for the Atlas District Urban Renewal Project of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, doing business as Ignite CDA. We will open public testimony here. Again, Mr. Lyons' testimony that he provided earlier will pertain to this item as well, so we will make note of that. And then, Tom, you have indicated that you'd like to testify here, so come on up and we'll swear you in.
All right. Please affirm the following. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Tom Torgerson, 4808 Fernand Hill Road, sorry about that, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Don't start my clock until I give this excuse. First, I would like to thank Ron, because I thought it was very kind of you to mention senior care of shoveling sidewalks, because it shows you care about Woody. So thank you for that. and I'll tell you, and I'm actually, so for 25 years, I've been heavily involved in the political aspects and governmental affairs of the Idaho Association of Realtors and the Coeur d'Alene Association of Realtors. I'm president currently for the 3rd time. But I don't feel comfortable, because I don't think anybody has a strong enough handhold, including the city, about what's going on at Atlas. So I'm going to speak as the kid who grew up 3 blocks away at 1018 Front. I'm speaking personally as Tom Torgerson, and not on behalf of the Association of Realtors. And it's a really strange thing, because one of the benefits of being here and knowing all of you, and you two, and all of these guys, and everybody else here, and Tony Burns and everybody, is that same access that we get, because we live in a tight-knit community, also makes it difficult. When I graduated with Phil, and his wife and I went to kindergarten together, but then you disagree with somebody. And it's not necessarily disagreeing with Phil. I have said time and time again, this is going too fast. It's a brutally expensive, wonderfully unique piece of property. I don't get the rush. There's too many unanswered questions. Dan pointed it out quite well. I think there's legal questions. And frankly, I have no concern about one district loaning to another. I mean, I don't feel that there's going to be any misappropriation, but is it going to get challenged by somebody? Do you want to stick it out there and get in trouble when you don't know, when it's never had case law, potentially? Maybe it has. I don't understand it. I personally, and I'll go on record as saying this, and I'm going to take some licks, I can't think, there is one house in the city of Coeur d'Alene, on Lake Coeur d'Alene, not the river, that has a private dock. It's at the end of 11th Street, and I know the guy, and that's one house, one private dock. There's another couple that share a dock. There's one private dock on this lake in the city limits. Frankly, from a kid who grew up here, we have plenty of riverfront and lakefront access. I think it's great to have more. But the biggest question that's been thrown back at me when I say, why don't we think about a venue where we can have a stadium or a facility to have a concert that could compete with some of the other places? We can't even have fundraisers in this town. We have to send them away 30 miles in either direction because we don't have a facility that can do it. And Steve and I have talked about this. Private enterprise won't do it because you can't have a high enough rate of return for the potential risk for that. This is what the beautiful thing is about a municipality that can own something like this. And again, only if the voters decide. All you have to do is be revenue neutral. And so there is a possibility. I'm not saying it's the right answer. I'm just saying, where are we, why are we not figuring this out? And that's just one thing. The other thing is, if you look at like San Antonio or Portland, Oregon, or San Diego, having residential, you know, making this all public access along the river, taking away all the most valuable property where you could recoup your money. You could build that facility, frankly, if you developed the waterfront. You could pay for a big 4,000-seat venue, I bet. But then to put residential secondary behind the public access, that's a waste. Why not at least have that be the commercial, where you can have bars and restaurants and art walks and things like that, where people can enjoy the waterfront, but also partake in business ventures that are right there on the waterfront and sit out there and hang around. It doesn't make sense. Either develop the waterfront privately or have commercial right behind it and have public access so you can utilize it. Look at how well this thing's gone down here at the end of 3rd Street. You know, everybody goes and hangs out around there, and they have a hot dog or whatever, or beer, whatever they do. I mean, I just think it's going too fast. So this is why I'm doing this just as me. I grew up here, right down the street. I just think, slow down. You spent the money. It's no big deal. Step back and just take a big look. And I don't say that I have the answers, because I don't. I don't have the tools. You know, I'm a CPA, but I haven't I don't have the knowledge base of the data set. But gosh, it's a beautiful, incredible one-time shot. And to screw it up, and I'm not saying you are, but to potentially screw it up, I think is an incredible waste. And so I'm just begging you guys to just take a step back, slow down. I think there's too many unanswered questions. And again, I don't have the answers. You know, and I'm the guy who always likes to talk about stuff privately and try to figure stuff out. But I just feel like there's hardly anybody here. It's ridiculous. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, we can't drag people here.
No, I know. I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah. But you know what, and
I don't mean that as an insult to
and you can have as much time as you would like, but there has been, there's been a lot of thought, and there's been a long public process, and I understand.
And I've been engaged in it, but I don't
I understand the concerns, and we, when we started this, Phil, when was the first, you had the chart up there, when was the first public meeting? Last February.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, and so we had a lot of people at those meetings, and overwhelmingly, their choice was public waterfront. And that's, I think, the message that everyone has gotten here, was it was public waterfront. So we went off of that premise to develop this plan. What we're doing tonight is approving the urban renewal district. There's still going to be some opportunity for input on the process, correct, Hillary, on the planning of it. You know, the planning of what's going to happen there isn't set in stone.
Right.
What we're doing here is creating the funding source to move forward for the public space and the infrastructure.
And Steve, I fully support. Sorry, Your Honor, Your Mayor. I fully support that, absolutely. And quite frankly, I told Dan this. One of my most favorite things of this is the dog part. We have nowhere to go throw a stick to your dog. I think that's, interestingly, I think that's one of my favorite things that I've seen down there. So, I mean, there's lots of ideas. So please, again, it's not meant by any means as any kind of an insult. I think there's just a wonderful opportunity. I just am wondering, is it the best route to go? And that's all I'm saying. I just respectfully hope that we could maybe look a little bit longer.
All right, thank you, Tom. Appreciate
Tom.
that. Anyone else wishing to give public comment on the Atlas District? If not, we'll...
Mayor, I have one to read into the record, please.
Go ahead, Renata.
This was provided via email. This is from Cheryl Bentz Sipe. I currently rent an apartment in Mill River, south section of Saltese, and love the area for its beauty and convenience. I am also an instructor at North Idaho College. I regularly ride my bicycle on the Centennial Trail as well as kayak there on the river. I'm interested in purchasing a townhouse or condo in the new Atlas waterfront project. My concern is that they are made affordable for regular working citizens and not overly high priced. Many, if not most, of the condos at Riverstone and Belle Reve are priced at $500,000 and up. And from my understanding, many of them are owned by out-of-towners and thus sit empty and or are rented out for a large part of the year. It would be great for those of us that actually live and work here year-round to be able to buy into one of the up-and-coming Atlas townhouses or condos. Thank you for considering my comments.
Okay, thank you. And then now we will close the public testimony portion of that. And Renata, if you could read the title, please.
Council Bill number 18-1029, an ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, approving the urban renewal plan for the Atlas Urban Renewal Project, including revenue allocation financing provisions, and authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to county and state officials providing severability, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for the publication of a summary of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date.
And we will table this item until December 4th of 2018, which is our next council meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move for adjournment.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.